joining us today. This is Paws for Thought, the podcast of the National School Dog Alliance. I'm Helen Lewis in Swansea University, and I'm delighted to welcome our guest today, Dr Marc Abraham, OBE, who is probably better known as Marc the Vet. It's lovely to see you, Marc, and a very warm welcome.
Lovely to see you too. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Do you want to give our listeners just a little bit of background about yourself and your work?
I am a vet, hence Marc the Vet. And we agreed that we thought this would be the proper environment to do this podcast because I'm often not seen in my surgery, not just because I work part-time, but because, I'm sometimes in Westminster and judging dog shows and doing stuff around the world for dogs. So it's actually quite nice to chat within my consulting room, which is in Rottingdean in East Sussex, just outside Brighton. Brighton being the football team I support, being represented here and here. Anyway, that's a little bit about me. But I am a vet, I'm a campaigner, I'm an author, I'm secretariat and co-founder of the all-party Parliamentary group for dog welfare. I'm a massive supporter of the Dog Schools Alliance. Dogs in Schools Alliance. What's the correct name for this?
Oh, the National School Dog Alliance.
That's it. National School. I think more dogs should go to school, but we'll talk about that. And I do lots of school visits, and I'm involved with a lot of campaigns, not just animal welfare now, but also human welfare, because you can apply the template of campaigning and creating change, whether it's in or outside Westminster, to anything really, raising awareness, changing behaviour, improving legislation. I've also got a documentary that's about to come out in autumn called Dogspiracy. So I'm involved with lots of things. I have many plates spinning, but everything is kind of revolves around animal welfare and or campaigning.
And I think
there you go.
I mean, I don't know how you've had time to come and talk to us today with all of this going on, but
I've got to go, actually. I've got to go. I've got a dog that needs to go to school.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got double biology at 3 o'clock.
That would be fine. Oh, I'm sure everybody will be concentrating really well. Biology at 3 o'clock. In terms then of thinking about the welfare, obviously people who are listening today might be thinking about whether having a dog in school is right for them, whether it's going to work in their context. We do hear lots of stories about how dogs can be in school for a long periods of time or coming in regularly. As a vet, what would you say are the crucial things that schools need to get right then, just to sort of set the dog off properly?
I think with regard to dogs in schools, it's kind of, if someone ruins it, they ruin it for everyone, is the feeling I get. And so that's why, i.e., if someone gets it wrong, then it's like a blanket ban for dogs in schools. So it has to be dealt with incredibly sensitively. Animal welfare has to be prioritised, as always, with all my projects. And it's just and first of all, it's important to say why dogs are important at school. To reduce anxiety, a reason to go in often, and not just for pupils. I think teachers benefit too. I think there's certain breeds that probably thrive better in a school environment, like cockapoos and the sort of designer crossbreeds, because they're super family friendly and fairly bomb-proof. But in my experience, those are the sort of dogs I see on my rounds when I do school visits. I also think that with special needs, education and disability, there is a huge opportunity for dogs to be used, not exploited, but used in a really, really intelligent way. So I know we've chatted about, and you've presented, I think, a case where attendance is a massive issue post-pandemic, especially, and even more so for SEND, special educational needs and disability children, pupils. A dog was actually used in the nicest possible way to go to the child's house and for them to walk the dog to school to improve attendance. And I think giving pupils responsibilities of looking after the dog, I think reading to dogs is something, for maybe non-verbals, pupils. So there's so many hats that dogs can wear in terms of the positivity they can bring to the school environment. not just for pupils, but also for teachers. So they have to be looked after very carefully. And that obviously is about reducing, mitigating any chance, any risk of overwhelm. Because as soon as the dog's overwhelmed, obviously it can't perform its function, which is to reduce anxiety in pupils. But there's a possibility to react, to maybe be nervously aggressive, maybe to bite, maybe to growl. And that's when things can go horribly wrong for everybody, which is what I was talking about before. So we have to treat animals with respect, which is what we do anyway. But in those environments, even more so, because, you know, you've got screaming kids, you've got maybe pupils that don't really know how to approach a dog responsibly. Maybe they've never had a dog. Maybe they have a dog. Maybe that could be even worse, that they sort of assume that their dog is the same as the school dog. So it just has to be dealt with very carefully and sensitively, which is kind of what we're doing. And that's how we started chatting, because the way you're approaching this is exactly, in my opinion, is exactly the right way to approach it. It's prioritizing the welfare of the animal, which then prioritizes the welfare of the human.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a fantastic topic. And I've seen it every time I've seen dogs in schools. It's just worked beautifully. And the whole atmosphere changes. It becomes softer, more empathetic, kinder, compassionate, caring. You know, there's so many life skills that having a dog teaches kids and adults. So yeah, it's incredibly positive as a movement and as an idea. It just needs to be treated very, very carefully and with huge amount of respect for not just the dogs, but everyone involved.
I think you're right. And I think you mentioned that sort of sense of overwhelm. In your experience, you know, working with lots and lots of dogs in lots of different contexts, what sort of signs might a school see if they think they've got the perfect dog? It's a great dog at home, it loves people in the family, and then they bring it into school. What sort of things should people be looking out for then, as maybe things to work on with that dog, or just questions to ask?
I think, most, if not all, school dogs are owned by one of the teachers. The teacher, you know, generously brings that dog in. So the teacher is probably the one person who knows all the signs. But common signs of canine, I guess, aggression would be, you know, the side eye and the slight lip curl. They call it the ladder of aggression. You know, it just builds and builds and builds. And the problem these days is everyone's so busy on their phone, they don't tend to notice that the slight nuanced behavioral signals that the dog's giving out until it's too late. So I think my biggest piece of advice would always be for teachers and pupils to understand dog body language, and this goes for in school or just everyone. I think we've lost that. As I say, people walking on their phones, people walking with their dog behind them, people, obviously the dog's off lead is fine, but there comes a point where there are scenarios where you need to be aware of your dog's body language. Schools is one thing, being just out and about in pubs, in restaurants, etc. So become an expert in dog behavior, all I can say, and noticing the subtle signs, because when it comes to a bite or a growl or anything else, then it's a whole new world, because your dog is officially then out of control potentially. It can be, you know, muzzled in public. You know, things can get legal. And all this can be prevented by just being aware of stuff before it happens. It's all preventable. So I'd say, you know, become an expert in dog behavior, and all the early rungs of the ladder of aggression. And then, you know, back off, you know, respect the dog. Don't, just because the dog gives you a side eye or lifts its lip, it doesn't mean keep going because, you know, it hasn't bitten you yet. It means back off. That dog needs space. And sort of approach maybe a different day. But yeah, it's about recognizing signs and reacting to them responsibly, and not assuming anything.
I think that's really, I mean, a really good advice, because I think it can be really disappointing if you've planned your session and the children are excited and the dog comes in and it's just not the day that the dog wants to be there. That can be really hard. So I guess as a teacher, having another backup plan, as you would do in any other lesson, is really important, because you're dealing with an animal who's got feelings and, you know, emotions.
Yeah. And on that topic, you know, it's another important lesson to kids that we don't feel 100% all the time, or ready to be touched and stroked and maybe prodded a bit, because there are, if a dog's got a fever, for example, or if a dog has arthritis, or there's an underlying condition that's maybe chronic, that maybe hasn't been diagnosed or maybe treated appropriately, there's a stress level already. So, like us, if we're super tired, or we're just maybe a bit stiff from exercise, or a bit febrile because we've got flu coming on, and you're feeling a bit sensitive, the last thing you need is anyone touching you, shouting at you, screaming at you, throwing a ball at you. So I guess the school dog can also teach when it's okay not to be okay. And so that dog can't really play with you today because it's not really feeling well. That's a huge life lesson. So, but as I say, it's to recognize all these signs, and it's to act on those responsibly, rather than assuming that the dog will be all fine because it's a dog. So one of the things I teach in my school visits, chat about, is the mental health of dogs, and the mental health of each other, and how closely linked they are. And just because it's a dog doesn't mean, as you just alluded to, that it hasn't got feeling, or it wants to play all the time. And we have to respect animals' mental health, physical health, our own mental health, physical health, and the mental health and physical health of our fellow pupils, the teachers, our parents. And that's, so I kind of do an umbrella chat, and conclude at the end by everything is linked with kindness, and how we should all be conscious of being kind to everything, the environment, animals, teachers. They like that when I say that. So yeah, it's just a case of joining the dots, really, rather than it's just a dog, or it's just the environment, or it's just my parents. It's like we're all linked. Every situation can be improved by kindness. And yet, I did a school visit yesterday. I said, "What's kindness?" And one kid said respect, and one kid said not being mean. So these are conversations you can have with kids, and these were, I think, 5, 6 years old. And the more you're not telling them, you're just sort of suggesting that this is a really positive way forward, and a really nice energy level to sort of get involved with. Yeah, because I think as soon as you tell kids something, they tend to do the opposite. Yes. It's empowering them with the tools to be kind, and then you sort of let those conversations continue with the teachers who are in the room, or their parents when they get home, or even better, their colleagues or fellow pupils, classmates.
And I think that idea of being able to transfer being kind to one person or one species or themselves, and being able to transfer that across, is really valuable. Do you think, in your experience, when you're watching the dogs that you see in school, are they getting something from the experience, or are they there doing a job of work because they have to be and they're tolerating it? Or have you seen that genuine enjoyment of interacting in schools?
No, I think they definitely enjoy interacting. I mean, Woody, who's a wirehead dachshund, is a school dog for Cardinal Newman, which is a huge school in Brighton and Hove, 1,200 pupils. He spends most of the day just having a ball thrown, and he would do that forever and wouldn't sleep and never get bored. But then Lisa, his owner, is a phenomenal reader of dog behavior. She's a very experienced dog owner, and she knows when he has enough, or potentially when he's about to be overwhelmed. So yeah, again, it's up to the owner, who's usually, or the caregiver, as we call them these days, who is also one of the teachers, to call the shots, really, and say, look, my dog is fine for an hour here, fine for maybe an hour a few hours later, and that's it. And I think as long as everyone then plays by the dog's rules, the owner's rules, then we always have a positive interaction. And the caveat is always, if the dog's not feeling it, then maybe we'll delay it or postpone to another time when the dog's feeling a bit better.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important message that's coming through. I mean, how does this, the National School Dog Alliance and the work that we're trying to do with teachers and with children, fit in with all the other work that you've been doing? I know you're so busy campaigning for animal welfare in general. Is there kind of a sort of alignment with the other work that you've been doing?
100%. 100%. You know, I work with so many different charities, organisations, campaigners, MPs, ministers. It all tessellates. And I think when you're campaigning for change, and that, as I said at the beginning, that can be raising awareness, that can be improving legislation, it can be looking for some sort of behaviour change. So everything tessellates, whether it's in the consulting room, whether it's at a dog show, whether it's in Westminster. All the campaigning and all the activity, it does really come together, because everything is underpinned by not just animal welfare, but, as I say, compassion, kindness, empathy. And there's just different ways of promoting that, if you like, or being involved with that. So the stuff with the dogs in schools it sits perfectly, obviously, because I do lots of school visits and I'm a vet and I'm a promoter of responsible dog ownership. So it ticks so many boxes. Whether how much progress it makes in Westminster, I think, is just determined by the appetite of, obviously, the parliamentarians, which is usually, with animal welfare, good, but it has to be done appropriately and as a specific template with campaigning that allows parliamentarians to understand what you're doing, understand the solution you're proposing, and then engage with your campaign and back it, support it cross party if possible, and make progress. And if it's legislation you're after, be prepared for the long haul. Be prepared for disingenuous organisations to sort of sabotage and slow things down. But if you're coming from a good place and what you're campaigning for is just the right thing to do, that classic cliche, right side of history. But if it's the right thing to do for animals, for humans, for everyone involved, you just have to keep going until you get it. And that's what we did with, for example, Lucy's Law. But yeah, it's Parliament is a fascinating place, especially for someone like me who had absolutely no idea about politics until I needed to. And I think my tagline, if you like, is, you know, no one really does anything in terms of political campaigning or campaigning anyway, until you care enough about something to do it. You have to care about them. You care about this enough to push it forward. And you see, I always quote BBC Breakfast, which is a campaigning masterclass every single morning, because they have MPs on, they have campaigners on the sofa who often just recently suffered personal tragedy, or people doing petitions, or people doing some sort of awareness walk. I recommend everyone who wants to be a campaigner or is interested in it to watch that show every single morning. And you can just watch half an hour of it. But there's always something that can really inspire people that want to change stuff. And they really do highlight certain aspects of grassroots campaigning that are just full of tips. And, as I say, they inspire people to change other stuff. So if anyone listening, if you really care about something enough to want to change it, watch BBC Breakfast. But there's loads of tools available that are accessible to all of us, that are free, especially politically, that we may not know about or feel that we are confident in engaging with. E-petitions, meeting MPs, select committees, all party parliamentary groups, engaging with celebrities, engaging with stakeholders like big charities or organisations. It's all possible there, and it's always two-way. So if you think you need a celebrity to promote a dog-related campaign, they're going to use that in the nicest possible way to make them look empathetic, relevant, current, and loving animals. Same with the old MPs when they used to hold babies for photo shoots. You know, I care. It's the same. If you do that with dogs now, they do exactly the same. I care. I'm empathetic. I'm compassionate. And you don't care if they are or not. You're just happy that they're supporting and endorsing your campaign. You know, drop-in events in Westminster. And there's even social media. There's so many ways of getting your campaign out there, getting noticed, getting supported, endorsed, having your message shared. It's all doable, but you just have to care enough to actually just enter that arena in the first place and not expect someone else to do it, or it's not important, or I can't be bothered, or it's just not my problem.
Yeah, I mean that's fascinating. And I know you mentioned earlier Lucy's Law. I mean, of the the campaigns and the policies and the campaigning that you've done, are there certain things that you're particularly proud of, and are there certain things that you are now really passionate about and really wanting to drive forward?
I think it builds and builds, because you know, when you come into politics or even into campaigning with no knowledge of it, you're proud of all the progress you make, and especially when you get rejected, lose debates, meetings don't work out, and you only realize 4 years later why that didn't work out. But every stage of progress is an achievement for a grassroots campaigner with no resources. So getting my first 100,000 e-petition, getting the petition debated in the main chamber of the House of Commons, you know, devoted to dogs and cats for 3 hours, you know, that's huge. You know, one of the most important debating rooms in the world. I think so. Changing the law was a massive, obviously, achievement. Lucy's Law, which is banning third-party sales of puppies and kittens, so not just pet shops, but any puppy and kitten dealers, banned it in England. And then my team, not just me, my team, which was led by Lucy herself, who was a rescued Cavalier King Charles Spaniel from a legal licensed puppy farm in Wales. She sort of led the campaign, and we humans filed in behind her. We then changed it in Wales. We then changed it in Scotland, and we've just had written confirmation from Northern Ireland that they're going to bring in Lucy's Law there as well, which not only bans third-party sellers in Northern Ireland, but it disrupts the pipeline from the Republic into the UK mainland through Northern Ireland. Another massive achievement personally, working with people like Ricky Gervais, heroes all of a sudden become friends and campaigning colleagues. You know, it's bonkers. Getting a rescue dog into number 10, you know, when Boris and Carrie decided on adopting, I facilitated that, and we ended up walking. One of the most surreal things I've done, walking down Downing Street with a pet carrier with little Dylan, the puppy, in it, you know, and having a photo shoot in the back garden of number 10. And asking Boris, I remember asking Boris, would you wear a Lucy's Law rosette, which I could have come up with and designed over the years and led the campaign slightly behind Lucy. And he was like, yeah, of course. And have the Prime Minister wearing your campaign rosette was a massive achievement. We had a garden party celebrating the law change, which I co-hosted with Michael Gove. I then gave a speech on the steps of number 10 to a packed Downing Street. And, you know, growing up as a vet and an animal lover, and my best friends were like frog spawn and broken eggshells and feathers. And I was so introvert and so shy, and public speaking was never on the agenda. And now I also created co-founded the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Dog Welfare, which is like an official body within Westminster, and we have regular meetings, and I'm speaking to 200 people for 3 hours, chairing meetings with guest expert speakers and sitting in the chair that Churchill briefed the MPs during the Second World War. So it's been so yeah, lots of things along the way have been I would consider achievements, but they're all almost stepping stones to other things happening, i.e. progress. And I guess my best achievement, or one of the best, is I brought it with me to show you, is getting my OBE from, I got it from actually Prince Charles before he was king, but it was on the Queen's penultimate birthday honours list. And that's for services to animal welfare. So it just shows, like, from no knowledge of campaigning or politics or law or history, that an idiot like me can end up with a medal from the king, hanging out with Ricky Gervais and getting a rescue dog into number 10, one of the most famous addresses in the world.
And it's amazing. And I think the way you make it sound, I suspect you've made it sound like it's a very straightforward, this is how you can do it. But that sense of having passion in something and having a belief that something's the right thing to do can really take you forward. I mean, what are you mentioned the All-Party Parliamentary Group now. Can you explain to the listeners a little bit about that and the sorts of things that you're focusing on? I know you've got animal heroes that you celebrate, or...
Yeah. So the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Dog Welfare, its acronym is APDOG, All-Party Dog Advisory Welfare Group. APPGs, All-Party Parliamentary Groups, are official groups set up within Westminster, and they focus on a subject. Now, there's already an animal welfare one. This is a dog welfare one specifically. There's usually one for every country, or most countries. There's usually one, there's some for autism, there's ones for all different sort of issues in society that need parliamentary conversations. So I set this up in 2017 as a response to discovering that some of the biggest animal welfare charities in the UK were blocking my legislation, blocking Lucy's Law behind the scenes. So I ended up starting the all-party parliamentary group, calling them in to give evidence to my committee because they didn't know that I knew, and then proving in front of a room full of journalists, campaigners, and celebrities that they had actually blocked legislation to ban puppies in pet stores and commercial third-party sellers. So that's when the power shifted to the campaigners. And I just thought, I've set this up, this all-party parliamentary group up, specifically for this meeting. And now what do I do with it? So we had regular meetings and we look at contentious, controversial, important issues happening in the world, well, in the UK mainly, that involve dogs. So, for example, greyhound racing. So, for example, dogs used in experiments. Example, coming up in October the 22nd this year, the relationship between domestic violence and animal abuse. We have the state of UK rescue every February. That's the big committee room, 200 people. So we have guest speakers that come and we have a discussion afterwards. It's incredibly respectful, beautiful rooms, committee rooms in the Palace of Westminster. I chair them all. And then every December, as you mentioned, we have the unsung heroes. So being a grassroots campaigner myself, it's so hard sometimes to get noticed and to have a platform. So over the year, I kind of keep half an eye out on who's doing what and invite people into Westminster who haven't got that platform, they haven't got the resources, but they're doing such amazing work, it needs to be heard. I usually co-host with a celebrity, dog lover, and we kind of, so the rest of the year is kind of making progress on serious stuff. And sometimes there'll be a drop in the afternoon beforehand, which is when MPs come and they hold a placard saying, I support rescue dogs, something simple as that. Or in this case, in October, we're going to have MPs that sort of, I'm aware of the link between domestic violence and animal abuse. And these are all tools to raise awareness about these important issues that people can then engage with. And again, as I say, it's two-way. These are ways of parliamentarians showing that they care about something, and especially something that's involving animals and that's popular. That's what they love. So there's that. And then afterwards, and I have to give a shout out to Agria Pet Insurance, Agria, because they sponsor the post-event networking food and drink, which again is, you have a 3-hour meeting in Westminster, quite high pressurized in terms of intense, serious conversation. So now we have food and drink afterwards in a local bar near Westminster where people can decompress and they can actually talk to people and swap business cards and continue that conversation in a more relaxed environment. And it's becoming beautiful to watch, because what started as one meeting in 2017 has now become drop-ins, it's now become meetings, it's now become networking. And for me, collaboration is the only way you ever get things done. And these are all opportunities where people can collaborate. Charities that maybe previously were competing are now publicly becoming friends. And we've definitely seen a change in culture of people prioritizing what needs to be done rather than how they need to be seen. And there's a huge movement of inclusivity, which I don't think traditionally there has been. And I've always said, if you want to get involved, get involved. That's the way we make progress. And fear of missing out is one of the biggest drivers for that. So if you crack on and you've got Ricky supporting you and you've got Parliament on your side and you've got other celebrities and you've got 100,000 e-petition and you've got all this 90 odd MPs on side, not many people are going to ignore that or want to get involved. And if they do want to get involved, great. And that's how you change the law, really. You create an ambush. You get the public on side, cross-party MPs, celebrity, and you surround the chief decision maker with all the things that are telling them you need to do this, and then you give them no choice. So yeah, there's lots of strategies with regard to campaigning, especially in Westminster. But my point is, it's all doable. It's so accessible and free. It just takes time. It just takes time. And I learned a lot I played a lot of chess with my dad when I was growing up, and it definitely trains your brain for the long game, you know, and to not necessarily ignore things not happening, but just accept them, take a deep breath, maybe take a few days out, and then move on, because there's always a reason why that's happened. And as I said at the beginning, sometimes it's not obvious. Oh, got my little ear thing. Sometimes it's not obvious for maybe 2 or 3 years afterwards why that thing didn't work out. You just got to be patient and pleasant to people and not be a troll and just ignore biting. Just be positive all the time. Annoys people. I used to ignore, now I sometimes block. Don't really get much trolls anymore. But my point is, if you attack someone online, you look worse than they do often.
Yeah.
So just don't do it. Just praise something else rather than being negative about that. So yeah, there's lots of strategy and technique involved with campaigning, including online campaigning. But you kind of learn that as you go. Yeah.
And could so if listeners who I'm assuming have tuned in because they are passionate about dogs and they really care about dog welfare, could they find out more about the All Parliamentary group? Are there ways that they can follow you or find out what you're sort of campaigning about?
That's a lovely question. Yes, so apdawg.co.uk, apdawg.co.uk. It's in my bio, I think, on Twitter, which is now called X. Which is Marc Levet, MarcThevet. But AppDog, just type in All Party Parliamentary Group for Dog Welfare. And not only, so I write a newsletter every month, takes about 6 hours, about doggy things, either in the UK, in Parliament, in the world, you know, funny stories, relevant stories. I usually list dog relevant petitions as well, which people can sign and share. So yeah, it's as a campaigner, it's a great platform to not only raise awareness and make progress about issues, but you tend to get a seat at the top table with regard to scrutinizing legislation, being at those round table discussions. And it's definitely given my campaigning ability more access to more change in Westminster by being involved with the All Party Parliamentary Group. And everyone's welcome to attend in Westminster. And that's the other thing about Parliament. Everyone's welcome. People, you don't have to be invited. So when we have these events, and the events will be, obviously the details are sent out in the newsletter, people can come, anyone can come, anyone's welcome. And that's what I love about it. It's so accessible. You just need to know where to give your time, because you could drive yourself mad trying to do everything. And that's why I wrote my last book, Be More Mosquito, is about all the tools and listing them and how you use them appropriately, so you don't burn out, so you don't waste energy, and so you can make progress even if you have a full-time job, for example. Which is a struggle, because it's at the end of the day, as I say, it's time, but there are ways of doing it, and there are ways of doing it successfully.
And I think that will resonate with lots of teachers who are also incredibly busy trying to juggle all of the things they're doing. So strategies like that sound, really important.
And collaborating and having a coalition of people with varying skill sets. I mean, Lucy's Law, there was 6 of us. One sadly passed during the process. I was the one who lived closest to Westminster, Brighton. So I would front the parliamentary side. And then we'd have Sue and Linda in Wales, and Linda was more creative, a bit more like me. Sue was more business-minded. And then we had Julia in Folkestone, who was an absolute expert in the minutiae of legislation. We had Sarah in Redditch in the West Midlands, who was the barrister pro bono, who was sort of overseeing the actual legislation. So I don't think in the years that we campaigned, anyone ever overlapped. It was bizarre. It was the most beautiful coalition, like a family. Didn't have WhatsApp in those days, which would have made life a lot easier. So it's just emails till 3 a.m. But we slowly but surely, we navigated our way through the political system, presented reports, and hosted drop-ins. And at the end of the day, I think we did 200,000 e-petitions. We lost the first one, we won the second one. Debates and select committee. We did every tool. and obviously at the end of the day we have a change in legislation. But it's doable. I think that's my underpinning message to everyone now is anything is possible. You just have to be patient and believe it will happen, and back everything up with evidence. There's no point coming into with an opinion. It has to be evidence based and backed. And the other thing about campaigners, it's fine to sort of point fingers and rant, but you have to have a solution. Otherwise, you're just annoying. So you have to have a solution. You have to. Otherwise, you're just blaming other people or shouting at people in a playground. You have to go, that's bad, but this is your alternative. And that's when MPs start to listen to you, or the change makers, when you've actually provided a solution. It's too easy just to shout at people and point fingers. Yeah. But I mean, we couldn't have had this conversation 15 years ago because I had no idea about campaigning. But it started with dog shows, awareness raising. It then went to Westminster, and now it's much more heavily sort of not just animal welfare, it's human welfare. It's not just Westminster, it's sort of in other parliaments, not just in the UK, but around the world. So it's kind of exploded. So the documentary I've just made highlights campaigning in this country, but also in America, how different it is there. So a lot of it was shot on the East Coast, which will come out in autumn. But again, everything I try and do is kind of educational and explaining how not necessarily how I've done things, but how things happen, and the template in which the change makers kind of need your campaigning to be in before they take it seriously. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, Mark. That's been fascinating. And I've learned so much about, I don't know, politics is part of all of our lives, but maybe we don't understand some of the finer working and how we can be involved as kind of ordinary people. So that's been really fascinating to hear. And, thank you, because I know that you've made such a difference in the work that you and your colleagues have done. It's been brilliant to talk to you this afternoon.
I'm really pleased to have chatted with you, Helen. But yeah, as I say, anyone can do this. Genuinely, anyone can do this, and it's a great feeling as well when you've achieved stuff, especially for animals, and you've made a difference. And people talk about a sense of purpose, but I think the older you get, the more likely you are to want to give back, or even have the time to give back. But I would definitely recommend it. And if you see a petition circling around, especially a government one, whether it's Welsh government or UK government, sign and share it, because it doesn't guarantee that thing's going to happen, but it guarantees 99% of the time that it's going to be debated. And often keeping the conversation going for some of these issues is almost, if not more, important than changing the laws about them. To raise awareness, keep the conversation going, engage MPs, ministers, Prime Minister, is essential. And the problem is a lot of people give up, a lot of people burn out, and that gives the message that either it's not important anymore or it's been solved. Campaigning is all about keeping these conversations going, looking online, going on X, which is the ultimate campaigning, especially for political change, and looking for people having similar conversations to engage with and draw into your coalition. And if they're nice people, like-minded people, and they haven't got an ego, you can make unbelievable progress very, very quickly. All about the tone, all about the messaging, and all about providing that solution and being positive.
Thank you. I feel every time I listen to you, it just makes you feel really positive that you can really do things and make a difference. So thank you for giving up your time this afternoon, Mark.
Absolute pleasure. And you providing this platform, maybe hopefully inspires someone to campaign or get involved with something they feel strongly about. So everyone plays a part in the campaigning journey and making positive change happen and being more mosquito.
Thank you.